Tonight, on the eve of the Alberta vote, the final pitch. The last lap in a long race. In the heart of Canada's oil patch, the energy transition.
Oil and gas is the backbone of our economy, but we're doing a lot of really cool things in terms of environmental initiatives.
Preparing for a green future, even where fossil fuels still rule. Plus, a violent turn to a landlord-tenant dispute.
The victims were fleeing the residence. They were running away.
The backstory behind a shootout on the front lawn.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina, reporting tonight from Calgary.
Alberta's largest city is a critical battleground in deciding the outcome of a very close provincial vote. Good evening, everyone. The last full day of campaigning in the Alberta election was notable today for the front-runner's absence. The UCP's Danielle Smith ran a race but largely skipped the other race today, while the NDP's Rachel Notley kept the pace. Alberta Bureau Chief Bill Fortier is with the Notley campaign, but our coverage begins tonight with CTV's senior political correspondent Glenn McGregor, who followed Danielle Smith.
Hi. Crossing the finish line of a 5K run that seemed less grueling than Danielle Smith's 30-day race to hold on to power. The UCP leader's only publicized appearance on the final day of a campaign in which she often appeared to be running against herself. She launched the campaign on the attack against NDP leader Rachel Notley's record as premier between 2015 and 2019.
It's a choice between moving Alberta forward and building a brighter future or returning to the NDP's costly and failed policies.
But Smith was repeatedly confronted by her own past and remarks she'd made on her radio program, likening Albertans vaccinated against COVID-19 to supporters of Hitler's Third Reich.
We have 75% of the public who say, not only hit me, but hit me harder and keep me away from those dirty unvaxxed.
And a 2021 paper she wrote suggesting Albertans should pay for visits to see family doctors. During a televised leaders debate, Smith reverted to a familiar theme, linking her opponent to federal leaders unpopular in Alberta.
She's going to walk in lockstep with Justin Trudeau. Has not stood up to her boss, Jagmeet Singh.
The wildfires that raged across the province took her off the campaign trail to function as premier. But she also had to put out fires involving some of her own candidates, including one who said transgender children in schools were like human waste and cookies. Smith wouldn't say if the candidate will be bounced out of caucus if she wins her seat.
She has a lot of work to do. I believe in redemption. I do believe that people have the ability to have second chances. She's got a lot of proving to do.
Her campaign finished stronger in the final weeks, scoring endorsements from former Prime Minister Stephen Harper and federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, and focusing on an NDP plan to increase the tax rate on larger corporations from 8% to 11%.
This election is about whether we want to keep moving Alberta forward, whether we want Alberta to be stronger and safer and more affordable.
The question to be answered Monday, will past Conservative voters overlook some of the leader's foibles and get behind her economic plan?
Yes, there were some things said in the past that were completely offside, and she apologized for. When you find yourself in office, all of a sudden you have to put on your big boy pants and really govern for the people that you represent. And I think she's doing a very good job of doing that.
With the polls showing an extremely close race, the outcome could depend on the ground game, which party's organizers are most effective at getting their supporters to the ballot box tomorrow. Glenn McGregor, CTV News, Calgary.
I'm Bill Fortier at the halfway point between Alberta's two biggest cities, where the province's NDP campaign made its first election eve stop.
They're so close to the finish line.
Red Deer has two seats that were held by the UCP, but leader Rachel Notley sees the city as a possible pickup for the New Democrats.
I have actually a lot of optimism.
This teacher supports the NDP promises to boost staffing levels in schools and introduce a modern curriculum.
I have never hoped for anything so hard in my life.
I've talked to lots of people that have said they've never voted for NDP before, but this year, this election, it just seems like such an obvious choice.
Notley finished the day in front of a big hometown Edmonton crowd after several days of campaigning in key battleground Calgary.
Albertans are ready for change.
The NDP platform includes money to attract and keep more healthcare workers, a promise to cap summer power rates, and a plan to increase corporate taxes, unpopular in the business community. Last election, the party won just 24 seats compared to the UCP's 63, so a win tomorrow would take big gains. This expert says it is possible.
Will these gains be enough to pass the UCP and win that coveted majority? That's a big question. It's going to be tough, but the path is there.
Notley did not take questions from journalists at either event today, perhaps a sign of confidence or maybe caution, just one day before she finds out if she'll head back to the Premier's office or will continue to lead the official opposition. Bill Fortier, CTV News, Edmonton.
And joining me now for some analysis of this close race is CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos, and I want to pick up where Bill left off. And it seems to me in this final stretch, the priority is to avoid any major missteps.
Yeah, it's interesting because both candidates and campaigns seem to be doing the same thing, but for very different reasons, at least according to the people close to those leaders who I was speaking to today. Talking to people close to Danielle Smith, they see a path to victory. They didn't want to make any missteps. It's a narrow path, but they see it. So they wanted to be careful to avoid kind of going before the media and screwing that up in any way. The NDP also hesitating to take questions, but for a different reason. The people I'm speaking to close to Rachel Notley are worried, actually, about a lack of a path to victory that they see at this point, according to their internals. And they're primarily worried about the big group of voters consistently throughout each poll of undecided voters, right? So about a fifth of Albertans right now who are eligible to vote don't know who they're voting for. And when the NDP is at the doors, they're hearing that they're really kind of uncertain or kind of maybe even thinking about staying home, and that's really concerning them.
Well, decision day is tomorrow. We'll see what happens.
For sure.
Vassy, so good to see you. Thank you. And you can join Vassy tomorrow for Power Play from UCP headquarters here in Calgary, live at 5 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. here in Alberta on CTV News Channel. And after days of progress in the Alberta firefight, a bit of a setback. A handful of new fires sprung up overnight. More than a dozen are still burning out of control. Consequences of a warming planet. While the climate issue was not a priority on the campaign trail, the electorate is engaged in other ways. This is the birthplace of Alberta's oil boom, Leduc, where 76 years ago, the so-called black gold discovered here ushered a period of unprecedented transformation. So when people in the rest of Canada sometimes say, if they say that, you know what, Alberta's stuck, do you think that's fair?
I think it's a period of transition. I think letting something go is destabilizing for your own personal identity. And so it's a really emotional shift.
And an economic one.
It's an elephant that you need to move.
Even in Leduc, there is a determination to reduce dependency on a resource that has brought so much prosperity, but is also choking the planet.
People realize it is happening, and they know that any party, whoever wins, they're going to work on climate change. And I say, for example, BC and Quebec, lots of hydropower. They are blessed with hydropower, so it's easier for them to decarbonize their electricity generation sector. Alberta, Saskatchewan, different.
The challenge hasn't been ignored. In many ways, Leduc is leading the way, preserving wetlands, critical ecosystems, and exploring other solutions.
70% of our businesses still today are related to oil and gas supply. But we're doing a lot of really cool things in terms of environmental initiatives.
Take, for example, these charging stations that are free for the public.
The great part about this structure is we have solar panels right here feeding into the charging station. So it's truly powered by renewables, and it's clean energies.
And on the ice, before these young hockey players start practice, it was an electric-powered Zamboni that smoothed the surface.
It's a lot quieter. It doesn't hurt your ears near as much, and there's no pollution coming out of it.
Solar energy is another bright spot. The first solar panel here in Leduc was built in 2016. 7 years later, it has more than 5,600 in a city of just 34,000 people. And now this is one of the largest in Canada. Those solar panels help power the city and provide 1/5 of the energy for the city's rec center, a 300,000 square foot facility.
We reduce our CO2 emissions by 1,000 tons annually, and we're saving around $37,000 also.
A year?
A year.
Dan Claypool was just a teenager when he left his family farm in Saskatchewan and moved to Leduc.
We walk out to the rig and say, could we get a job?
That was in the fall of '49, 18 months after oil was discovered.
And they only had one question, are you a farm boy? Yes, you're hired.
And they asked you that why?
So on the rig, when it got really cold, the rig ran 24 hours a day, and so you had to, as a farm boy, were used to whatever the things were, you stayed there and worked.
Nearly 80 years later, he's witnessing another green shift, one he admits needs to happen, but at a pace that works for Alberta.
When you try to change something, it takes time to change.
The debate between the two frontrunners in tomorrow's election is how much time to give. Those on the front lines believe the province needs to better engage the original land keepers, Indigenous peoples.
We have to start working with the nations. We have to start listening to them and act on the advice that they're giving us, because we are, again, within their lands, within their territories that they have protected for, for all of history.
A delicate balance as voters in this province look to the future. And later we'll be back with more on the values Albertans hold dear. But first, CTV's John Venevelli-Rao is in the national newsroom with the rest of the news. John.
Thanks, Omar. And we will start on the East Coast, where a local state of emergency has now been declared for communities affected by two fast-moving wildfires on the outskirts of Halifax, where thousands of people have been told to evacuate. One fire has already destroyed a number of homes after breaking out this afternoon in the upper Tantallon area. Fire crews raced to try and contain the flames. There was a long lineup of cars as residents scrambled to get out, told to take their pets with them. Evacuation centers have been opened and several schools have been closed for tomorrow. Dry conditions and strong winds have led to multiple fires now burning in the province, triggering internet outages and air quality alerts, with crews from New Brunswick and Newfoundland being brought in to assist. To Ukraine now, and a massive weekend drone assault aimed at the capital as residents there are prepared to celebrate Kyiv Day, which marks the city's founding more than 1,500 years ago. Here's CTV's Kevin Gallagher.
This factory fire in Kyiv was sparked by falling debris as Russia launched its largest drone attack on Ukraine's capital since the war started. Air defense systems shot down 58 out of 59 Iranian-made drones, according to Ukraine's armed forces. Still, there was extensive damage below. At least 2 people were killed and several injured. Vladimir Golubenko's son is searching for his blind father's belongings. It's the first time, he says, he's heard the so-called kamikaze drones. The strike comes as Kyiv marks the anniversary of its founding. A defiant Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, says Kyiv has seen various atrocities from invaders and survived them all. The Western weapons that defended Ukrainian skies will also be key to the counteroffensive expected soon, though Russia's ambassador to the UK dismissed that threat.
It's a big idealistic mistake to think that Ukraine may prevail, which Russia is 16 times bigger than Ukraine. We have enormous resources, and we hasn't just started yet to act very seriously.
That ambassador also accused NATO of escalating the conflict by providing advanced weapons to Ukraine, though he didn't say how the Kremlin will respond. John?
Okay, thank you, Kevin. After a contentious campaign, Turkey's longtime president has won re-election. Supporters of Recep Tayyip Erdogan celebrated after he beat his rival, who slammed the election, calling it the most unfair in years. Erdogan got 52% of the vote and said Turkey was the real winner as he extends his rule into a third decade. Now to a pair of critical upcoming votes in the U.S. after a tentative deal to extend the debt ceiling and avoid a crushing default was reached. With more, let's bring in our Richard Madden in Washington. Richard.
Yeah, John, President Joe Biden admits concessions were made on both sides in a deal that will let America pay its bills for the next 2 years.
We've got good news.
Catastrophe averted for now.
And the agreement also represents a compromise, which means no one got everything they want. But that's the responsibility of governing.
President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy finalized the deal just 8 days before the U.S. Treasury runs out of cash.
America believes that we've spent too much, so this spends less.
The plan increases the debt limit until 2025, after the next presidential election. It caps spending on domestic programs, but will expand work requirements for some recipients of food stamps, and that's angered progressive Democrats.
This is saying to poor people and people who are in need that we don't trust them. And I think it is really unfortunate that the president opened the door to this.
Some Republicans are furious there weren't enough spending cuts, calling it insanity, unacceptable. No one claiming to be a conservative could justify a yes vote. So it's now down to the wire. The bill needs to quickly sail through both chambers of Congress with no delays, then signed by the president before the crucial June 5th deadline. John.
And we'll see how the stock market reacts in the morning to this. Okay, thank you, Richard. Coming up, a deadly dispute.
There was a disagreement surrounding issues within the house, which led to their murders.
2 young tenants allegedly gunned down by their landlord. There are still questions tonight after an extreme escalation in a landlord-tenant dispute. It happened in a community about an hour's drive southwest of Toronto and left 3 people dead. CTV's Heather Butts picks up the story and a warning: some of the images are disturbing.
The hours-long standoff in a quiet neighborhood ending in a deadly shootout with police.
My husband and I looked at each other and I said, was that gunshots? And he said, yes. He said, get away from the window.
Hamilton police say the 57-year-old suspect barricaded himself in the home after he shot and killed a young couple. His basement tenants trying to flee following a dispute that investigators say was not over missed rental payments.
I heard some loud bangs. I thought it was like someone hitting something with a sledgehammer. The ambulance came and I looked outside and those people were lying on the ground.
A 27-year-old woman, an educational assistant with a local Catholic school board, and a 28-year-old man, an electrician, were gunned down on the front lawn.
These are not people that this should happen to. They're not involved in any level of criminality. They're truly innocent victims, hardworking people, young people. They were engaged to be married. And this is a very tragic incident.
Investigators wouldn't say how many guns were recovered at the scene, but confirmed multiple firearms are registered to the home, including handguns and rifles. Officers spent nearly 5 hours negotiating with the suspect before he was killed by police. The province's Special Investigations Unit is probing the fatal shooting. None of the people involved in this incident were known to police. Heather Butts, CTV News, Toronto.
Well, still ahead, dry conditions in the Maritimes. Also wreaking havoc on farmers. More on their extreme weather woes after the break. Canada's men's hockey team captured a record-setting 28th World Championship today in Finland.
There, now looks at the side of the goal. Wraparound try back last turn away, rebound, score!
St. Louis Blues forward Sammy Blais scored the winning goal as Canada went on to beat Germany 5-2 in the gold medal match. The triumph ends a mini drought for Canada, which last won the title in 2021. In the Maritimes, lingering dry conditions this spring are leaving many local farmers unsettled, even dipping into their water reserves 2 months earlier than expected. It's led to plenty of anxiety in the fields. With more on that, here's CTV's Atlantic Bureau Chief, Creason Ajkate.
There's always work to do. I like it that I come to work and it's going to be something different.
William Spur has been doing what he can to keep his fields from drying up when much of his crop is still in the ground. He says a hot, dry spring and unusually cold nights have made growing conditions difficult for producers.
We've just been irrigating nonstop. The last 2.5 weeks we've been irrigating probably as much as we normally would in like July and August, and it's not even June yet.
Spur says he planned to install this costly irrigation system later this summer, but was forced to do it now, or he could lose these young apple trees.
I'm a little worried about what could come. If we don't get any rain, if this keeps up, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Greg Donald says many potato producers in PEI only got a quarter of the rain they usually get in April and May.
If we get rain, like good rain over the next couple weeks, we'll be fine. But if we don't, it'll be very concerning.
According to Environment and Climate Change Canada, parts of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia experienced the driest April on record. A mild winter followed by a sudden cold snap that plunged temperatures to -20 also took its toll on many farms, including those in Wolfville.
That killed all the blossoms and the peaches and nectarines. 90% of the cherries and probably 80% of the plum blossoms are affected.
Researchers continue to point to climate change as the leading cause of just how unpredictable extreme weather events can be.
I think it's either the coldest June temperature in 2018, we had that frost, or it's the coldest winter temperature we've had in the last 25 years, or it's been one of the warmer winters we've had. Producers
are relieved there is some rain in the forecast, but they will need a lot more in the coming weeks to improve growing conditions on the surface. Christian Ashkate, CTV News, Wilmot, Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia and Alberta, two provinces in need of more rain. Let's send it back to Omar now in Calgary. It's been such a challenging fire season in the province, Omar.
Yes, it certainly has, but there's also so much resiliency, John. Thank you. And one memorable Albertan we met shared with us his guiding principles.
I think the Lord helped me on some of those tough decisions that I had to make.
A lesson in longevity coming up next. This is how Richard and Megan McDonald celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary today in Calgary, breaking the world record for the fastest time running a marathon handcuffed to another person. Congratulations to them and to everyone who made it across the finish line. The Albertan you met earlier in the broadcast knows all too well life is definitely more a marathon than a sprint. So we're giving him the final word tonight.
Is this you?
Yes.
Written right in the title of his book, Dan Claypool is a survivor.
I was born in 1933. So.
Is that your family?
Yeah, that's the family. And so, of course, here is kind of the rest of my philosophy. I always say I'm not a religious man, but I think the Lord helped me on some of those tough decisions that I had to make, and hopefully made the right one.
Dan's 10 commandments of success include speak with people, smile, call people by name, be friendly, be genuine, genuinely interested, generous with praise, be considerate, be thoughtful, and be willing to give service, because what counts most in life is what we do for others.
That's kind of how I operated with all of the people that, first of all, I worked for, were my bosses, and also with the people that worked for me.
And your 11th commandment is eat lots of honey.
Oh yes, absolutely. I don't think I put that in here.
A tablespoon of honey every day is his secret to a long life, he says, and he should know Dan turns 90 next month. That's a snapshot of this Sunday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night from Calgary, and see you again tomorrow.